Imagine you are a genetically engineered, biologically immortal super soldier.
Right, a walking tank, basically.
Exactly. You are encased in this walking tank of power armor. You've just kicked down the massive, ornate doors of a planetary throne room, and you are currently in the process of hacking the Emperor of Mankind to pieces with the chainsaw sword.
Just a totally brutal scene.
Blood is literally everywhere. The dynasty is falling. And now I want you to imagine that in this specific horrific scenario, you are supposedly the enlightened good guy.
Which is just wild to think about.
It is. That is the exact, jarring, blood-soaked paradox that opens the novel we are tearing apart in today's deep dive.
Yeah, we're getting into Horus Rising by Dan Abnett.
Right, published by Black Library back in 2006.
Right.
And this book, it takes a sprawling, utopian golden age of humanity and meticulously shows us how it, plants the seeds of its own total fiery destruction.
It really is the ultimate exercise in tragic irony because, you open the book looking at the absolute pinnacle of human achievement.
Yeah, a unified, science-driven manifest destiny.
Exactly. And you are fully aware as a reader that this society is cheerfully constructing its own funeral pyre.
They're just so proud of it, too.
Oh, absolutely. And the psychological tension of this novel relies entirely on the fact that it's a prequel.
Right.
It is set 10 millennia before the famously decaying, stagnant, endlessly warring universe of Warhammer 40,000.
Right, the whole grim dark thing.
Yeah, the famous grimdark setting. And for anyone who knows that wider universe, a galaxy defined by, the absolute worst imaginable theocratic fascism, this era is completely unrecognizable.
It's almost shockingly bright at first.
It is. This is an era of secular optimism. It is an era of relentless, supposedly rational expansion.
But right off the bat, we have to talk about the psychological powder keg that sets this whole era in motion. Because the Emperor of Mankind, the actual legitimate emperor, has spent the last couple of centuries leading this great crusade.
Reuniting all the scattered fragments of humanity across the stars.
And he's winning. He has essentially established total galactic market dominance. But then, right on the cusp of final victory, he does something completely baffling.
He really does.
He decides to pack up, return to Terra, which is Earth, and hand the keys to his military machine over to his most favored Primarch son, Horus.
Right, he appoints Horus as the War Master.
Yeah, and then he just locks himself in the basement on Terra to work on some secret project, and he refuses to explain himself to anyone.
It's essentially an absentee father dynamic, and that is the engine of the tragedy here.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because, it's like a visionary CEO finally getting a company to $1 billion valuation, right?
Right.
And then handing the keys to his best executive, locking himself in the basement and turning off his phone. What could possibly go wrong?
Everything. You have to look at this from the perspective of the Primarchs and the Space Marine Legions. These are not just soldiers.
No, they're demigods.
Exactly. They are demigods engineered for a singular purpose, to conquer the galaxy at the side of their creator. Their entire psychological framework is built around seeking the Emperor's approval.
So when he just up and leaves without them, it's devastating.
It creates a massive, unfillable void. It breeds confusion, resentment, and just a profound sense of abandonment.
It's an unimaginable blow to their collective ego. You build a race of literal weapons, tell them they are the vanguard of human evolution, and then suddenly bench yourself and leave them to manage the cleanup operation.
And the tension isn't about whether this is going to end badly. The audience knows this ends in a catastrophic galactic civil war that threatens human extinction.
Right, the Horus Heresy itself.
Yeah, the fascination is purely mechanical. It's about how a society built on absolute, unshakable certainty actually shatters.
So how does Abnett start this breakdown? Because he doesn't give us some grand sweeping monologue about the nobility of the crusade.
No, he refuses to give us the philosophical high ground we expect. He opens with violence, confusion, and this brilliant piece of narrative misdirection in the first 3 chapters.
Oh, the assault on the false emperor. I love this part.
It's so good.
The 63rd expedition of the Luna Wolves Horus's own elite legion of Space Marines. They drop out of the sky onto a human colony that survived the long isolation of the galaxy.
And they find a guy sitting on a throne who already calls himself the Emperor of Mankind.
It immediately forces the reader into this state of cognitive dissonance. You're reading a book about the Imperium, anticipating the arrival of the true emperor, and instead you get a fake-out.
Yeah, a funhouse mirror reflection. A pretender who has organically claimed the same title, ruling a civilization that, by all accounts, seems to be doing relatively fine on its own.
And the assault itself is a total nightmare for the Space Marines. These are the Luna Wolves, the tip of the spear. The guys who literally do not lose.
But they drop into this city and are immediately butchered by invisible warriors.
He was for heads, right?
Right. They are taking horrific casualties. It completely punctures the myth of their invulnerability within the first few pages.
But of course, the sheer grinding mechanical attrition of the Space Marines eventually wins out. They breach the palace and they completely wipe this civilization out. They slaughter the Pretender. It's an absolute annihilation.
Which brings us to our central protagonist, Captain Garviel Loken.
Okay, let's talk about Loken.
He is a captain of the 10th Company, and he's the anchor for everything that follows. And what's fascinating here is his internal reaction to this opening slaughter. It's highly irregular.
Oh, so.
Well, you look at a genetically engineered, psycho-indoctrinated super soldier, and you expect a detached killing machine, right?
Yeah, a weapon that doesn't question where it's pointed.
Exactly. But Loken is standing in the ruins of this civilization, surrounded by the bodies of humans they just exterminated, and he experiences profound existential doubt. He is deeply morally troubled.
He questions whether the man was actually a threat at all.
He really does.
Now, I hear you positioning Loken as this great moral compass, but let's take a step back and be real for a second. He is a guy who just finished massacring a civilization because his boss told him to. He wiped the blood off his chainsaw. Is he actually a moral compass, or is he just the least broken tool in a box of completely psychopathic living weapons?
That is the perfect question, and it is exactly the tension Abnett wants you to feel. Loken isn't a modern pacifist inserted into a sci-fi setting.
No, he is still a butcher.
Right. But in the context of the Astartes, the mere capacity for introspection is revolutionary.
Right.
He isn't a moral compass because he refuses to kill. He is a moral compass because he requires a reason to kill.
Right. He needs the killing to make philosophical sense.
He desperately wants to believe that the Imperium brings enlightenment, not just subjugation.
And that desperate need for philosophical justification leads directly to his conversations with his mentor, Kirill Sinderman.
Oh, Sinderman is such a great character.
He is. He's basically a professional orator, a propagandist, and a mentor figure to the troops. And right after this massive, bloody massacre, Sinderman decides it's a great time to give Loken a lecture on the subjectivity of truth.
Which is just incredible timing.
I mean, delivering a college-level seminar on subjective reality while the orbital bombardment smoke hasn't even cleared feels incredibly deliberate. So what does this all mean? Why introduce a philosophical debate about truth right after a massive bloody battle?
It is deliberate because the war zone is the philosophy. The Imperium operates on a doctrine called the Imperial truth.
Right. The state-mandated secularism.
Yeah, it is a militant, aggressively enforced atheism that claims to be rooted purely in objective science and reason. So Sinderman's lecture is deeply prophetic. By discussing the subjectivity of truth, he is inadvertently revealing the cracks in the foundation.
Because the Imperium just slaughtered a planet because its leader used the wrong title.
Exactly. That is an objective reason. That is subjective ego enforced by superior firepower. The early chapters show that the Imperium's manifest destiny has a massive dark cost. The truth of their righteousness is entirely subjective.
Right. If you are standing behind the barrel of a bolter, your truth is manifest destiny. If you are the civilian standing in front of the bolter, your truth is apocalyptic tyranny.
Beautifully put. It sets up the ideological collapse to come.
So the Imperium isn't just physically conquering the galaxy, they're running an ideological steamroller over it. And to document the glory of this steamroller, they bring along the absolute last people you would ever want in a war zone. The Remembrancers.
Yes. The introduction of the Remembrancers is where the scale of the narrative shifts from the mythic to the painfully mortal.
We get to see the human element.
Exactly. The Astartes are simply too massive, too emotionally stunted to carry the emotional weight of a tragedy on their own. You need fragile, easily broken humans to show the actual cost of the crusade.
So you have these civilian artists, poets, photographers, or bict makers embedded with towering transhuman killing machines.
It's such a clash of perspectives. You have Mercedes Oliton, a documentarist trying to capture the pristine narrative.
And Euphrates Keeler, who is fascinating.
She really is. She's a combat photographer who has actually been in the mud, so she commands a tiny sliver of begrudging respect from the Astartes because she doesn't flinch when the shooting starts.
But then you have Ignace Carcassy.
Carcassy. He is the quintessential fatalistic observer.
The juxtaposition is insane. It's like embedding a cynical, heavy-drinking, anti-establishment beat poet into a squad of elite, genetically modified special forces. It is a biological certainty that he is going to self-destruct.
Oh, absolutely. He's a recipe for disaster. The narrative function of the Remembrancers is to provide a vital, human-scale perspective that contrasts sharply with the superhuman warriors.
And their growing disillusionment is meant to mirror the listener's own dawning horror at the Imperium's methods, right?
Yes, Carcassy especially. He is the court jester who realizes the king isn't just naked. The king is a murderer.
And we see this play out in chapters 4 and 5. He wanders around the city they just finished pacifying. He doesn't see the glorious integration the propaganda talks about.
No, he sees the brutal, militarized suppression of a human populace.
He sees the boot on the neck. He becomes totally disgusted by the brutal reality of the Imperium's methods.
He witnesses the exact gap between the pristine imperial truth that Cinderman preaches and the bloody reality that Loken practices.
And because he's a poet, and because he gets incredibly drunk, he does the one thing guaranteed to get you killed in an autocracy.
He speaks out loud.
Right. He sits in a bar, entirely intoxicated, and starts openly mocking the Space Marines. He badmouths the Imperium and writes satirical poetry about their sheer, brutish thuggery.
Which triggers an immediate systemic immune response from the military structure.
It is a shocking sequence. There is no trial. There is no debate about the freedom of expression. Carcassy is summarily executed.
It's so swift and brutal.
He is murdered by the very soldiers he was commissioned to immortalize. They just snuff him out.
The thematic weight of this execution is profound. Up until this point, a reader might be subconsciously rationalizing the Imperium's actions. You tell yourself, well, the galaxy is dangerous, maybe they have to be harsh.
Right. You make excuses for them.
Exactly. But Carcassy's execution violently shatters that rationalization. It is a shocking reminder of the Imperium's fundamental intolerance. It shatters the illusion of an enlightened, benevolent golden age.
It's the moment the propaganda poster peels off the wall and you see the concrete bunker underneath.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, while the civilian element is being brutally suppressed on the ground, the narrative simultaneously pulls us up into the absolute stratosphere of the command structure. I want to shift focus to the upper echelons of leadership and talk about the Mournival.
The inner circle.
Right. Loken gets promoted to Horus's closest group of advisors.
The Mournival serves as the strategic and philosophical brain trust of the Luna Wolves. It consists of 4 captains, designed to represent the different humors or temperaments necessary for balanced leadership.
You have Ezekiel Abaddon, representing pure, aggressive pragmatism.
And Terrent Torgadon bringing humor and lateral thinking.
And Loken is brought in to be the philosophical anchor. But the ritual of him joining is completely bizarre.
It really is, isn't it?
The Imperium is supposed to be this hyper-rational, hyper-secular society that has supposedly burned all the old religious texts and eradicated superstition. Yet the induction ceremony is a secret society ritual held in a darkened room.
Timed to the phases of the moon, complete with blood oaths and chanted vows.
It's surprisingly pretentious and deeply traditional. It's incredibly tribal.
It reveals the massive hypocrisy at the core of the Space Marine legions. They are weapons forged in the fires of science, but their internal culture is deeply primitive.
Why do they do that?
Because they rely on these archaic codes of brotherhood, because the Emperor stripped away everything else. They have no families, no hometowns, no normal human connections. The ritual of the Mournival is a desperate psychological attempt to create a familial bond in a species of manufactured orphans.
Wow, manufactured orphans. That's bleak.
It is.
But here's where it gets really interesting. I want to focus on the specific advice Loken is given during this ritual. They tell him he needs to follow his instincts. Let's break down the mechanics of that. Loken is a space marine. He is genetically engineered to lack the capacity for fear.
Right.
So how can a being devoid of fear, a primary survival instinct, actually trust his instincts when making moral judgments? Fear is the alarm system. It's what gives you a gut feeling that a situation is wrong.
That is a brilliant point, and the answer is they cannot. And that is the fatal design flaw of the Adeptus Astartes. To use a mechanical analogy, imagine taking an autonomous high-performance race car and completely disabling its collision avoidance sensors.
Okay, I'm tracking.
It operates with ruthless, hyper-efficient speed on a track it knows. But the second it encounters an unexpected variable, something outside its programming, it doesn't slow down, it doesn't reassess.
It confidently accelerates straight into a brick wall.
Precisely. Because it doesn't possess the mechanism to recognize it is in danger until it's too late. When the Mournival tells Loken to trust his instincts, they aren't talking about human intuition.
Right, they are telling him to trust his psycho-conditioning.
And his tribal loyalty to Horus. Their instincts are just an echo chamber of their own manufactured perfection. If we connect this to the broader theme of the nature of leadership, Horus is incredibly charismatic, but ultimately vulnerable.
The bonds of brotherhood are their core strength, but also their massive blind spot.
Exactly. The Astartes are physically invincible, but psychologically and morally under-equipped, which makes the impending betrayal all the more devastating.
Which is the perfect segue into part 2 of the novel, chapters 6 through 10. This marks the exact moment the universe's rules change. The track runs out and the race car hits the wall.
The impossible happens.
The entire framework of the Imperium's reality collapses. Describe this terrifying scene for us because it's a huge shift.
Loken, this avatar of logic and secular reason, is forced to watch one of his own Astartes brothers, a Marine named Jubal, physically mutate via a foul demonic power.
Into a literal monster.
Yes, into a warp-spawned creature named Samus, and it starts murdering the other Marines.
It is a complete cognitive short circuit. Loken is standing there looking at a creature that the Imperial truth legally mandates does not exist. The cognitive dissonance is staggering.
The Emperor's absolute state-mandated truth is that there are no such things as demons. Magic is a lie, gods are a myth.
Yet Loken is staring right at one as it tears his brother in half.
And the immediate aftermath is equally telling. The Astartes don't have the vocabulary to process what just happened.
And the mortal crew members definitely don't.
Right. Lacking the rigorous brainwashing of the Space Marines, the crew immediately begins to crack. Whispers start. Cults form in the lower decks almost overnight.
The facade of a purely rational universe shatters the moment the irrational proves it has teeth. And this forces Horus to pull Loken aside and finally explain the mechanics of the universe. He drops the ultimate bombshell.
He reveals the War Master's secret.
Yeah. Horus tells Loken that the warp, the alternate dimension of energy that the entire Imperium relies on to travel faster than light, isn't just an empty ocean.
Right. It is actually populated by sentient, malicious, predatory entities, the Chaos Gods.
But his justification for the lie is what really gets me. He tells Loken that this knowledge is kept strictly secret from the masses to prevent widespread panic.
The logic is that if ordinary humans knew that literal hell was real and malevolent gods wanted to eat their souls, the resulting mass panic would rip the empire apart. So the Emperor legislated atheism to starve these warp entities of the emotion they feed on.
But if we look at this objectively, it's like building a massive fortress with walls a mile thick, right? But then leaving the front door wide open and the security system turned off. Just because you've mandated a state religion that believes burglars are a myth, it makes no sense.
It is an act of supreme, paternalistic arrogance. The Emperor looked at a cosmic predator and decided the best defense was to blindfold his children and tell them the predator didn't exist.
So how does enforcing ignorance actually protect anyone?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it doesn't protect them at all. It merely delays the inevitable and ensures that when the breach happens, the defenders are utterly defenseless.
Because they have no conceptual armor.
Exactly. This is the theme of the Seeds of Heresy. The heresy wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow, insidious corruption rooted in the suppression of truth. By denying the existence of chaos, the Emperor didn't protect his sons. He left them entirely unarmed against it.
You cannot shoot spiritual corruption with a bolter.
Right. When a Primarch like Horus encounters the whispering manipulation of the warp, he has no framework to understand he is being manipulated. He interprets the voice of a dark god as his own brilliant ambition.
The Imperial truth didn't starve chaos. It created a massive vulnerability that chaos easily exploited.
Perfectly said.
And the absolute tragedy of this enforced ignorance is that Abnett goes out of his way to prove to the reader that the Emperor's way wasn't the only way. The Imperium's entire justification for its brutality is that there is no alternative. But then, In chapters 11 through 15, they run headfirst into the Interrex.
Ah, the Interrex. They're a mirror to the Imperium.
I enthusiastically love this part of the book. Describe the Interrex for us because they are fascinating.
They are a highly sophisticated, peaceful human colony that operates on ancient Greek ideals. They evolved entirely separate from the Imperium during the long isolation.
And they possess advanced technology, right?
Yes, arguably better than the Imperiums in several areas, particularly their musical-based mathematics and weaponry. And crucially, they lack the Imperium's xenophobia. They live in harmony with alien species rather than exterminating them.
It's like the Imperium has been aggressively bulldozing a forest to build a highway, claiming it's the absolutely only way to travel. And suddenly they meet a society that built flying cars and just
Yeah.
lives in harmony with the trees.
That's a brilliant analogy.
But the Interrex aren't naive pacifists. They are a complex, heavily armed society.
Right, their technological parity isn't what threatens the Imperium, it is their philosophical maturity.
Which brings us to the most important fact about the Interrex. They already know all about the Chaos Gods.
They refer to it as cows. Yeah.
Right. They understand the warp. They actively warn the Imperium of the evil lurking within it. They treat chaos not as a superstition to be denied, but as a severe cosmic environmental hazard to be managed. They even have a museum where they keep chaos-tainted artifacts safely locked away under guard.
The Hall of Devices?
Exactly. So the Luna Wolves arrive, and the Interrex look at these giant, genetically modified, rage-filled transhumans, and they're horrified. They realize immediately that the Space Marines are completely ignorant of the warp.
They look at the Imperium the way a responsible adult looks at a toddler running around a fireworks factory with a blowtorch.
So the Interrex try to warn them. So why doesn't the Imperium just listen and take notes? Mechanically, why can't Horus just say, wow, the Emperor lied to us. Let's learn from these people how to actually fight the real enemy?
Because doing so would require the Imperium to dismantle its entire foundational mythology. We have to unpack the Imperium's profound hubris here.
Right, they have an unshakable belief in the superiority of their own mandated truth.
Exactly. With that belief, they physically and ideologically cannot accept the Interrex's warning. To listen to the Interrex, Horus would have to admit two impossible things. First, that his infallible father was a liar who left them vulnerable.
And second,
That a society that integrates with aliens is culturally and morally superior to his violent, xenophobic crusade.
the cognitive dissonance would destroy them.
It would. This is why the Interrex represent the moral third way. In many dystopian narratives, the regime justifies its horror by claiming it is the only viable option for survival.
But the mere existence of the Interrex proves that the Imperium's brutal, totalitarian, xenophobic methods were not necessary for human survival.
Right. This makes the Imperium's actions a choice, not a tragic necessity. They chose to be the monsters.
And that choice makes them incredibly easy to manipulate, which guides us right into Part 3, Chapters 16 through 20, the climax. The true enemy finally makes its move from the shadows.
The orchestrated ruin.
Exactly. We have to talk about First Chaplain Erebus of the Word Bearers. He is visiting Horus's fleet, and he's already secretly corrupted by chaos.
And the Chaos Gods don't wage war with armies. They wage war with context.
While Horus is actually genuinely trying to negotiate a peaceful integration with the Interrex, which, by the way, is a huge character growth moment for him.
It really is.
Erebus sneaks into the Interrex's Hall of Devices and steals a specific, deeply chaos-tainted weapon called an anathema.
Erebus's theft is the spark that ignites the powder keg. It orchestrates a catastrophic misunderstanding between the Imperium and the Interrex.
The Interrex discover the theft, realize a chaos artifact has been taken by the Imperials, and their absolute worst fears are confirmed. They immediately assume the Imperium is fully corrupted by chaos.
And because the Imperium's default setting is hair-trigger violence, diplomacy vanishes in seconds.
Driven by suspicion and ingrained xenophobia, the Imperium goes to war with the Interrex. The Luna Wolves deploy, and they completely destroy this beautiful, advanced, peaceful society.
That's utter tragedy.
And the horrific irony is that by destroying the Interrex, all the vital knowledge they possessed about fighting chaos is lost forever. They literally murdered the only people who could have saved them.
And in the ensuing chaos, that anathema blade that Erebus stole is smuggled away, destined to be used against Horus himself.
Which sets the stage for the downfall of Horus. He gets wounded by this blade, right?
Yes, he is wounded on the moon of Davin, and he is fundamentally corrupted. The wound puts him in a coma, bringing him to the brink of death.
And while he is hovering between life and death, the Chaos Gods initiate a highly specific psychological manipulation. They don't just offer him evil power.
No, they offer him validation. They exploit his deepest, most repressed insecurities.
Horus is the war master, but he is exhausted. The psychological burden of commanding the crusade is crushing him, and he's deeply insecure about why the Emperor abandoned him.
So Chaos shows him visions of a future where the Emperor is worshipped as a god and the Primarchs are forgotten.
Their statues torn down, their sacrifices erased.
It is a masterclass in exploiting hubris. Chaos convinces Horus that the only way to save humanity and his own legacy is to strike first. This sets the inevitable stage for his complete fall to chaos.
Which brings us to the deep irony of the book's title, Horus Rising.
Right. At the beginning of the novel, Horus is at the absolute zenith of his political and military power. He is rising.
But by the end,
The seeds of his ruin are fully grown. He hasn't risen. He has been spiritually fatally wounded.
it feels almost mythological. A critical reviewer noted the book's structure feels exactly that mythological ending, with the devastating image of thousands of perfect soldiers all weeping to see their commander kneel.
It's a powerful image.
Does this make the book a standard sci-fi action story, or something closer to Shakespeare or Sophocles?
Oh, it is classical Greek tragedy mapped perfectly onto a sci-fi canvas. Abnett perfectly executes the Greek tragedy formula.
A great man brought low.
Exactly. Brought low by a combination of cosmic manipulation and his own fatal flaws, specifically the conflict between his loyalty and his ambition. He is the architect of his own demise.
Which is why the critical reception of this book is so massive. Let's talk about its legacy as arguably the best in the massive Horus Heresy series.
It is a masterclass in licensed fiction.
Achieving what many thought impossible, turning a pulpy tabletop wargame backstory into a great novel with true thematic heft.
Taking background lore and attempting to imbue it with genuine literary weight is incredibly fraught. Most attempts fail, but Abnett's character work here is surprisingly deep.
Especially Loken's internal struggles.
Yes, and the incredibly rich world building that draws on decades of lore to create a lived-in universe, plus the vital emotional grounding provided by the doomed remembrancers.
But let me play devil's advocate for a second. There are flaws in the armor. Right?
Oh, certainly.
The pacing issues. For one, it has a very slow, exposition-heavy start.
Abnett has to do a lot of heavy lifting to establish the political reality early on.
And there's the critique that some secondary characters, including Horus himself at times, feel like cardboard cutouts who don't quite match their legendary mythical reputations.
His dialogue can occasionally feel stiff, and we have to mention the barrier to entry. The book assumes a reasonably high level of prior engagement with Warhammer 40K lore.
Which can leave newcomers slightly adrift. If you don't know the ultimate fate of the Imperium, some of the tragic weight might not land. But despite its flaws, what is the final verdict?
The final verdict is that it is a brilliantly compelling piece of military sci-fi that performs a magic trick. It makes the reader care deeply about the tragic downfall of characters who, by any objective moral standard, are not good people.
It really does. So summing up this deep dive, Horus Rising takes us from the blinding, optimistic light of a galaxy-spanning crusade into the dark, shadowy realization that the true enemy was inside the house all along.
And for you, the listener, the ultimate takeaway isn't about aliens or super soldiers. It's a profound warning about the dangers of absolute certainty and the hubris of refusing to listen to opposing viewpoints, like they did with the Interacts.
It perfectly illustrates the catastrophic damage caused when leaders suppress the truth for the public's own good. So I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to mull over on your own. The Imperium believed that enforcing a single unified truth through violence was the only way to save humanity from the chaos of the universe. But if saving humanity requires destroying art, executing poets, and slaughtering peaceful civilizations that offer a better way, is that version of humanity actually worth saving? Or did they lose their humanity long before the real war even started?